Coming up on our newscast, it seemed like the ruling and opposition parties would never see eye to eye on the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo. For now, they have agreed to discuss the issue next Monday. The former Vice President of Korean Air Cho Hyun-ah is set to serve time for her nut rage outburst. She is guilty of violating aviation safety regulations. The Islamic State militant group is about to feel the full fury of the United States. President Barack Obama has formally asked Congress for permission to use military force against IS. Stay with us for these stories and more.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Early Edition at 6, brought to you live from Seoul. I'm Na Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us.
Well, we begin with the latest on the so-called nut rage scandal.
A little over an hour ago, the Seoul Western District Court sentenced the former Vice President of Korean Air Cho Hyun-ah to 1 year in prison.
Well, for more, we have Arirang News' Kim Hyun-bin standing by on the line for us. Hello, Hyun-bin. So what is the latest as of now?
Well, as you mentioned, Daniel, the Seoul District Court has sentenced the former Vice President of Korean Air Cho Hyun-ah to 1 year in prison for obstructing aviation safety after she ordered a taxiing plane to return back to the gate last December. Now, of course, Cho's lawyer is seeking to appeal the charge. Cho, the eldest daughter of the chairman of Korean Air, was facing 5 charges, from changing the plane's flight path to obstruction of justice through deception. The charge that she's changed the plane's flight path carries the heaviest sentence of up to 10 years imprisonment with no possibility of suspension or parole. Cho pleaded innocent to the charge, arguing the runway should not be considered part of the flight path. Now, prior to the ruling, Cho submitted 6 letters of apology to the judges, appealing for leniency in her sentencing. The former executive ordered a senior crew member to deplane in New York last December after they did not follow the proper procedure for serving nuts to passengers in first class. The Seoul-bound flight from New York had been on the move before it had to return back to the gate. Back to you guys.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see if Cho's lawyer will appeal to the verdict that she got today.
It's such a simple and direct case made so complex and long. Apologies a little too late, I think, right? Well, moving on to other stories, a plenary session was supposed to be held at the National Assembly today.
But it was called off following a clash between rival parties over the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo.
The two parties have agreed to reschedule the session to next Monday. Our Park Ji-won has the story.
The country's 2 main rival parties have agreed to postpone a vote on the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo after the contentious afternoon that led them to call off the session until next Monday. Earlier in the day, lawmakers from the main opposition party boycotted parliamentary activities. They were protesting the confirmation of the nominee in committee this Thursday afternoon, with only lawmakers from the ruling Senate party unilaterally voting to move the vote onto the full assembly.
이완구 후보자의 사퇴를 국민의 이름으로 촉구한다. 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 새누리당의 일방적 경과보고서 채택을 강력히 규탄한다. 규탄한다. 규탄한다.
Earlier in the morning, the ruling Senate party had urged the opposition party to cooperate and allow the vote to proceed as scheduled in order to avoid a vacuum in state affairs.
Even long before I was elected floor leader, when the nominee was still the floor leader of the party, both parties had agreed that the full assembly would vote on the nominee following the 2-day confirmation hearing.
However, the main opposition party said it hoped to delay the vote to sometime later this month, given the various allegations surrounding the nominee's past.
Since I have worked with the nominee who was my previous counterpart on many issues at the Assembly, I really wanted him to come through the confirmation hearing well. Unfortunately, and very regrettably, he has fallen short of people's expectations.
Considering that the ruling Senate party has a strong majority of 158 in the 295-member assembly, if the ruling party wishes to go ahead with the vote, it can proceed with the session on its own. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Korea's ambassador to China, Kwon Young-se, is expected to be replaced soon. Reports say Kwon, who played an important role in President Park's presidential election victory in 2012, will be one of the heads of overseas missions to be replaced in the foreign ministry's upcoming shakeup. The news comes as the ambassador has been a talked-about candidate for either the new unification minister or presidential chief of staff. President Park Geun-hye has said she will carry out a reshuffle of the cabinet and her office after her new prime minister is approved by parliament.
It's not what you say, but how it's said, some say. But in this case, it's both. The tone and words of Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will use in his upcoming statement marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, has incited conflict in Japan. For more, here's our Connie Kim.
A debate is raging in Japan's parliament over a statement to be delivered by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in August to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Last month, Abe indicated he will not use certain terms such as colonial rule and aggression, deep remorse, or heartfelt apology, which were included in Tokyo's 1995 statement by then Prime Minister Domichi Murayama. The country's main opposition Democratic Party has labeled Abe's remarks intolerable and demanded the content of his statement be shared with and discussed in parliament, not just within the confines of Abe's cabinet.
Don't you think it's necessary to discuss the contents of the statement with Parliament for the sake of national consent?
It's hard to pass a resolution in Parliament. We'll announce a statement under our cabinet.
And in a rare move, the new Komeito Party, part of Abe's ruling coalition, has voiced its concerns, saying the past statements were announced after consultation with lawmakers.
The statement is accepted at home and abroad as the basic position of Japan. It's common sense that a consensus is reached within the coalition parties.
Adding to the conflict and confusion, the chairman of Abe's ruling Liberal Democratic Party's General Council, Toshihiro Nikai, said it's only sensible that the cabinet coordinate the upcoming statement with different parties. The international community has been calling on Japan to address its historic past wrongdoings and issue a sincere apology. And with Japanese lawmakers calling for Abe to strike a forgiving tone, analysts say the Japanese leader is under growing pressure to make a heartfelt apology for Japan's past wrongdoings. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
With the threats from Islamic State militants not showing any signs of dwindling, U.S. President Barack Obama decides to put his foot down. Determined to fight the extremist group wherever they exist, the American president asked Congress to authorize military action against them. With more, here's our Kim Min-ji.
U.S. President Barack Obama has made a formal request to Congress to authorize military force against a terrorist group that calls itself Islamic State.
This resolution reflects our core objective to destroy ISIL. It supports the comprehensive strategy that we've been pursuing with our allies and our partners.
In a televised speech, Obama noted the military campaign is a difficult mission, but said the U.S. is on the front foot and IS is going to lose. The request does not call for the deployment of ground troops, although a separate letter to Congress did state that it will be limited to rescue operations or the use of special operations forces to take military action against the extremist group's leadership. While there's general support for the plan, the Republicans want stronger measures, and some Democrats say the resolution goes too far. If the request is approved, it would authorize a military campaign for 3 years without geographical restrictions. It would also be the first war authorization since then-President George W. Bush sought authority to wage war in Iraq in 2002. The U.S. has conducted airstrikes against IS targets in Iraq and Syria since August last year, leading a coalition of Western and Arab nations. Obama said that although existing statutes provide him with the authority to take these actions, Congress backing would show the world that the U.S. is united in its resolve to crush IS. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Greece and the European Union failed to extend a €240 billion debt deal that expires at the end of this month. Despite hours of talks in Brussels on Wednesday, the parties were not able to bridge their differences. The new leftist Greek government blames the deal for its economic hardship and is demanding a reduction of its debt. But Germany, the biggest contributor to Greece's bailout, is not willing to give in unless sufficient conditions are met. Now, the negotiating parties have another chance next week, Monday to be exact, to try to hammer out a deal in Athens. In the meantime, thousands rallied in front of the Greek parliament in support of the government's anti-austerity stance. Global credit rating agency Moody's says lower oil prices will not spur global economic growth. The agency's quarterly report says the boost effect of the tumbling oil prices will be offset by the slumping Eurozone economies and a slowdown in economies like China, Japan, and Russia. It did, however, say that lower oil prices will benefit the U.S. economy as the favorable economic environment there will encourage consumer and corporate spending. Meanwhile, the agency kept the global economic growth outlook for the G20 nations at a little below 3% for this year and next. That forecast is based on predictions that Brent oil prices stay at $55 a barrel this year and $65 on average next year. Business partners face a one-day entry ban.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News. On Early Edition at 6.
Washington's announcement that it's lifting its embargo on Cuba means more than words to businesses around the world. And with business opportunities widening on the trade front, the Korean government is also gearing up to prepare domestic exporters to take advantage of this chance. Our Song Ji-sun has this next report.
From accessories and telecom devices to electronics and autos, those are some of the items Korean exporters could soon be sending over to Cuba, a market that is soon to be given a strong boost after the U.S. announced its plan to lift its decades-old embargo. An estimate by the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency suggests that foreign direct investment to Cuba will jump 17 times from the current $1 billion to $17 billion when the U.S. sanctions are completely removed. Seoul's outbound shipments to Havana stood at $56 million last year, while imports stood at $12 million. Kutra says Korean companies could use the Cuban market as a bridge to enter Central and South America, but cautions they should also be aware of the rigid government regulations there, as well as a lack of liquidity among prospective partner companies in the island nation. To hedge against the risks, Seoul is taking practical steps to help exporters explore the new business opportunities. The Korea Trade Insurance Corporation on Monday signed an MOU with Cuba Central Bank to provide $70 million in trade insurance to Korean companies seeking to export their products. In its bid to re-establish diplomatic ties with Cuba after more than 5 decades, Seoul is also offering humanitarian aid to Havana, engaging in a development program for the country for the first time. Earlier this week, Seoul's foreign ministry signed an MOU with the UN World Food Program for a $3 million project aimed at improving food production output and reducing poverty in Cuba by 2017. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's inflation rate dropped below the average for G7 nations last year for the first time in 8 years. Data from the OECD on Thursday says Korea's inflation rate was at 1.3% last year, falling below the 7 major economies' average of 1.6%. Now, this comes at a time when some experts are voicing concerns that Korea's economy may be heading into a deflationary phase. Korea's inflation rate has fallen below the G7 average just twice in the past, back in 1999 after the country's bailout from the Asian financial crisis and once again in 2006. The group of 7 countries includes the U.S., France, the U.K. and Japan. Those are all countries that have entered a period of slow growth and low inflation as their consumer prices have stabilized.
Moving over to the tech realm, for years, Korean chip makers have stayed among the top 5 in the global DRAM market. And for the first time last year, their combined market share topped 70%, thanks largely to technological advances and steady demand. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korean memory chip makers dominated the global DRAM market with a share of more than 70% during the September to December period of last year. The combined market share of Korean companies during the period is the highest recorded, of 0.7% from the previous quarter. Tech giant Samsung Electronics held more than 41% of the market, while SK hynix took up a near 28%. They were closely followed by U.S. chip maker Micron Group. Technological advances were key to the leading performances, says market tracker DRAM Exchange. Samsung Electronics produces smaller products than its rivals. Its 20 and 23 nanometer chips are 1/50th the width of a human hair. Also, SK hynix improved the manufacturing process for its 25 nanometer chips by reducing the number of defective products. Their high performance is expected to continue this year as well on the back of steady chip prices. The global market for DRAM memory chips is expected to increase 13% from last year to nearly $53 billion. As of Thursday morning, prices for DDR2 were traded at around $1.24, down 0.3% from the previous day. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
Korea's Daum Kakao has reported impressive fourth quarter profits. The local IT giant says its profits for the final 3 months of last year were up more than 70% to nearly $60 million, largely driven by strong advertising sales. The strong earnings come after the merger of Daum and Kakao Corporation last October. Since the merger, the company has rolled out mobile money transaction services and a taxi hailing application on top of its mobile messaging service.
Well, more people in Korea are reporting child abuse and more reported cases are being brought to justice. Data submitted to a ruling party lawmaker by the Welfare Ministry on Thursday shows that nearly 18,000 cases of child abuse were reported last year, of which roughly 9,800 cases were determined as child abuse and flagged for monitoring. That's about a 44% increase from the number in 2013. Experts attribute the increase to a special law that went into effect last September that strengthens punishments for child abuse. They added that more people have become aware of what constitutes child abuse from increased media coverage and public attention on the issue.
Shifting gears to a different topic now. Eating healthy, it's something most of us try to do, but we keep getting mixed signals about what we're supposed to do about it. Turns out that food we once thought was bad for us might not be that bad after all. A government advisory panel in the United States says, contrary to past recommendations, we should not worry too much about having too much cholesterol in our diets. Our Kwon So-ah has this report.
Before, when you reached out for food high in cholesterol like eggs or shrimps, you might have thought twice, especially if you're an older adult. But now researchers in the U.S. say you might be all right to tuck into your heart's content after all. At least that's what an influential nutrition advisory panel in the U.S. says, as it scrapped a warning against LDL cholesterol, often dubbed as the bad cholesterol, from its nutrition guidelines. In a first in 40 years, the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee's decision also runs counter to its last reform made 5 years ago, when it advised people to take in less than 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day, which is equivalent to the amount found in an egg. The instructional changes come as more nutritionists say years of research show that high cholesterol food does not greatly influence the health of ordinary adults. They believe that consuming these foods doesn't significantly raise levels of cholesterol in the blood or increase the risk of heart disease. Having too many foods high in saturated fats like butter and red meat, they say, is much more dangerous. The guidelines also warns patients with diabetes to still be cautious when eating high cholesterol foods. The committee plans to send its final draft to the government's Health and Agriculture Department in order to issue its 2015 dietary guidelines for the public. While some experts say cholesterol should have been dropped off the warning list years ago, others remain skeptical and still stand by previous research. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
I think I'm still one of those skeptics. Something tells me that I have to stay away from high cholesterol foods.
Right, my mind says no, but my heart says cholesterol and flavor goes hand in hand.
Well, let's move on to a different story. The film once captured the hearts of millions in the past, and the musical followed the trend recently.
Right, it once caught the hearts of millions, and it's going to do it once more here in Korea. The music from that movie was incredibly popular here, and they actually made a musical, and our Im Yoon-hee has a special behind-the-scenes look for us.
Guy meets girl, quite literally. The Irish street performer frequents a local pub to play his guitar, and just when he thinks he's through with music, a young woman who goes by the name Girl enters his life. The multiple award-winning musical Once has been staged around the world with over 1,000 performances on Broadway alone. And while live music is nothing new, the actors here take the musicality of the whole affair to a new level.
There are 12 actors and over 16 different instruments, so other than the main actors, everyone plays 3 to 4 instruments. And of course, mistakes and accidents are inevitable. For example, a guitar string can pop while on stage, but we have a system to cover for that, which involves constant communication between us and the actors. So the team catches each other's mistakes and is able to cover for them on stage.
It's a tough gig, singing and dancing on stage. So these actors know a good warm-up is key to a strong start. Anything to get their bodies going. But this isn't your run-of-the-mill musical. Of course, they're singing and dancing, but this is Once, which means doing all of the above, plus playing live music. This is also the first translated adaptation, so expectations are high. But the Korean Once team is willing to practice, especially since there's no musical conductor on stage to give them the cue. Cooperation between each and every musical actor is absolutely essential. That way, when it comes to curtain call, the show can go on.
The biggest difference between this and other musicals is that we're all playing instruments live throughout the show, so we're responsible for the music as well.
And since there's no director on stage to give us a cue, we designate a leader amongst us, and that person will give us a cue. They may use their eyes to signal, or they may make some big dramatic motion for us to pick up on. And through this, we can follow their lead and play the song together.
이런 식으로는 더는 곤란해 더는 의미가 없어 가라앉는 날 붙잡아줘 겁먹기 전에.
Are they musicians, actors, or dancers? It's hard to put these characters into one category. But that's just what you can expect from this unique love story musical, as this is something you only come across once in a lifetime. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Time for weather, but apparently our Michelle has some extra tips for us. Apparently there's something different with your metabolism when the temperature changes when it gets really cold.
Apparently there are foods that will keep you warm during the winter, and we are not talking about a cup of hot chocolate here. So Michelle, what do you have for us today?
That's right, guys. I have some healthy and tasty foods that can also keep your body temperatures warm. First of all, glutinous rice helps maintain your body blood sugar level high and also increases the body temperatures, while walnuts here activates your metabolism to keep you warm, while radishes and squashes are especially good to prevent you from catching a cold. Now lastly, those of you who have weak stomach should try some of the honey to warm things up. So try it out through the rest of the cold days and stay healthy. Now let's have a look at the weather conditions for the rest of the week. For the time being, we can expect mostly clear skies until Sunday afternoon, when rain is expected to fall starting in Chungcheong provinces and then expanding nationwide. Now with that in mind, let's have a look at the readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Friday morning at -6 and gets up to 3 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Busan will be a bit higher at 6 and 7. Moving over to other regions, Jeju-Hwaling gets up to 8, Dokdo hits 0, while Kumgang stays below sub-zero at -7 degrees. Well, that's all for me at this hour. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Michelle. That's it from us. Have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Na Hyun-kyung from us and the rest of the team in Seoul. Thanks for watching. We will be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.